Hello, Star Trek fans. Welcome to ReBinge It. This is the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we are rebinging Star Trek Voyager from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 2, Episode 14, Alliances. This episode aired January 22nd, 1996. Oh, before we talk about this episode, anything to say about the last episode, which was Prototype? That was the robot floating in space.
One thing Star Trek, I think, consistently does right is evil robots and computers.
Yeah, and we just recorded yesterday the Prodigy episode about the evil computer. So you're right, that's something they do pretty well. But it's been a long time since we had that conversation because we had Comic-Con in the middle. We also had a bunch of Prodigy recordings in the middle. So
I got sick.
Oh, yeah, and there was the Comic-Con COVID.
Yeah, that was fun.
Which you got and I avoided. But you're all better now. Everything's fine. Although we're a little behind in our recordings now, which is kind of scary.
See, that's what happens when you talk to like a million cosplayers and people in small press and the artist's alley.
Yes, I, on the other hand, played the role of the introvert and did nothing but go to panels. Also wore a mask in some of the bigger panels, or if anybody was coughing around me. So I managed to avoid it, but you did not.
Yes, you were smart.
Here's the advantage of being an introvert, if you were wondering if there was one. That is absolutely it.
Yes, but I still had fun.
If you are not subscribed to the ReBinge It version of this podcast, or you don't listen to our Prodigy pod, you may not have heard us talk about our Prodigy panel that we attended at Comic-Con.
Yes.
Now, if you want to hear us talk about that, you can go and listen to the Prodigy episode that came out the week, I think, after Comic-Con, maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. Time is a mess.
Time is soup.
Time is soup. I don't want to talk about that too much, but I will say that sitting that close to Kate Mulgrew was a lot of fun. We took a lot of great pictures of her.
Yep.
We were mere feet from her, and she was amazing. She looked amazing. She was super positive. She said a lot of great things about Prodigy, but she was pretty much, I think, what you would expect from Kate Mulgrew at a con.
She really knows how to work a crowd.
Yeah.
And the fan response, it was like being in one of the Marvel panels.
There's no question she was the draw. We were a little concerned that maybe she wouldn't be there because she wasn't listed on any of the autograph lists.
Yeah.
So I was concerned she wasn't going to be there. But then she had been there the day before in a different panel. So it was like, okay, so then it's worth going and trying to see her. And we did. And we did put some pictures out, I don't know, on one of our social media accounts, which feel free to go and find us at ReBinge It. That was a lot of fun. And I'm glad we did it.
Definitely worth the effort.
Okay, so we've talked about Comic-Con.
Yep.
We've talked about the last episode. Yep. I think it's time to start talking about alliances. In my head, it's a little difficult for me to keep this one separate from Resistance.
Yeah.
Because the title is exactly the same. In my brain, somehow these are the same words. So even this morning, I was thinking, oh, we're talking about that one with Joel Grey. And then we released that one weeks ago. Yeah, okay.
Different episode. Okay. Make sure you've got the right notes.
Yeah, where's Joel Grey? No, I got it. I'm ready.
In the cold open, we start with Voyager being under attack by Kazon ships. There are things blowing up, and Janeway's even been thrown to the floor. We do get a good, but way too short space battle. I'd love to see a longer one. That's just me personally. You know, like one of the ones that was in Deep Space Nine when they were fighting the Jem'Hadar and Cardassians.
I know you really like those. I can live without them. I just want the episode to be good. It's different in modern Trek with the different effects.
Yes,
but
it was a lot more expensive then.
It was brief, but they did a lot of damage to Voyager. Yeah. And, you know, when we watch Discovery, especially in the last season, every time something is going on where someone is attacking Discovery, they just have these, like, flamethrowers that are just shooting flames. Yeah. Instead of the beams falling, you get the flame shoot. It's so funny.
It seems like bad design.
It's so funny, and they do it every time. And every time there's an attack on a Starfleet ship, I think about that.
Well, as you said, the Kazon have managed to do a lot of damage to Voyager. Shields, engines, weapons offline. Basically, everything is broken, as far as I could tell. B'Elanna even has to shut down the warp core to avoid a breach. They're in bad shape, plus there are a lot of casualties.
Yeah.
And just to make things slightly worse, they have a hull breach.
Yeah, things are going great.
So I think it's pretty lucky that the Kazon chose that moment to actually break off. I can only assume the Kazon were actually in a worse condition.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. It was like, you've basically got Voyager. Every single thing is broken. I mean, maybe they have no way of knowing that, but they're in such bad shape. Why would you choose now to leave?
Yeah.
So yeah, they must have been even more crippled.
Right. Down in sickbay, one of B'Elanna's engineers is badly burned and cannot be saved. This shocks B'Elanna because it's one of her marquee crewmates who saved her life in the past. In Janeway's ready room, Chakotay comes to tell her of the dead crewmate. She asks him to schedule a memorial service, even though everything on the ship is broken, so I guess they have to have their priorities. Chakotay tells Janeway the rules have changed, and if we're going to survive out here, we're going to have to start changing too. He tells her Starfleet works well in the Alpha Quadrant, but maybe we should be more like the Marquis here. He says it's similar to what he experienced because no one was willing to help them, and they had to pretty much survive on their own. And let's go back to the original series. They were pretty much on their own most of the time.
And didn't know what they were going to run into. Every day was a surprise.
Exactly.
I guess they had long-term ability to ask for help, but and Voyager doesn't.
Well, in some of the original series, there was one, and I can't remember the episode. Somebody will bound to remember this, where Uhuru says to Kirk it's something like, it's 6 weeks to get a message to the Federation. They were that far out.
Right. Well, this is one of the problems with trying to integrate the Maquis and unwilling crew, right, into the Voyager crew, is that's the first thing they're going to say is, oh, this Starfleet nonsense is bad.
Right.
And what does Chakotay, the leader, do about it? Nothing. Makes it worse. I mean, look,
I feel you can't really use Chakotay and leader in the same sentence very easily.
No, I mean, I've ranted about it before, but this is almost like the exact reason why I'm ranting about it.
Yeah.
If he's not on the same side as Janeway and he is showing that he can do whatever he wants at any time, then they're always going to question everything. And this is what it leads to. It's like, this is proving my point.
Yeah. I suppose part of it comes down to what Chakotay does after this. Because I think it's completely valid for the first officer, whether they're Marquis or Starfleet, to broach this subject with the captain, that maybe things aren't working, maybe they need to change what they're doing.
No, absolutely. It's literally his job.
And for the captain to say, no, we're Starfleet, we follow the Starfleet rules, and his reaction to be, I disagree with you, but you're my captain, the chain of command says I do this, and then be 1000% on board, backing the captain up for the crew.
Yes, it's your job for sure to be voicing your opinion. In fact, you're usually in that position because the person above you trusts your opinion, right?
Yeah.
They're not always going to do what you want, but you're there because they trust you. The trouble is he's proven to not be trustworthy, and he is the one who has bred distrust of Janeway amongst the crew. That's on him.
Yeah. Janeway, like a good Starfleet captain, is not prepared to abandon their fundamental principles. Not in this season, anyway.
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet.
We haven't been beat up quite enough.
And Chakotay points out this is the 4th Kazon attack in 2 weeks. They've lost 3 crew and a number of injured. And he says, you can count on the Kazon to be back.
Well, for sure. Stating the obvious again.
Before he leaves, he tells Janeway he doesn't feel like they can afford to do business as usual. And cut to a very concerned-looking Janeway and into the opening credits. That ending was actually kind of funny, because in the last episode of Prodigy, episode 8 that we recorded, they do a cliffhanger ending where they zoom in on Janeway's face, and it's almost the same as this.
That's funny.
I'm probably going to do analysis as we go through this one, because there's lots of little points I want to bring up. I mean, I guess they don't know it at this point, but the Marquis were basically slaughtered by the Dominion. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I don't think their techniques work terribly well or are particularly good to follow.
Yes. Do you have evidence that those worked at all?
Yes.
No, you do not.
Right.
I mean, the only time it seemed to work was when you had Seska on board. You don't have her. And oh, by the way, whatever she was doing was probably also being controlled by the Cardassians at the time. So it probably wasn't really working.
Right,
so you're a moron and I'm not going to listen to you.
As someone said online, Chakotay's skills seem to be filling his ship with spies.
He was very good at that.
I'm wondering as well if I should point out that in Resistance, didn't we kind of already break the Prime Directive?
Well, I think we've broken the Prime Directive a few times. We only talk about it when we want it to be part of the story.
Ah, okay.
It's a plot point.
After the opening, we have our memorial service for the character we've never actually met, but everybody seems sad he died.
Yeah, but at least we're acknowledging that somebody died. Quite frequently on Star Trek, we don't. We don't pay. It's like, oh yeah, that red shirt guy died. Oh, that's too bad. And that's the end of it.
You know, that was one of your complaints about Deep Space Nine for a long time.
Mhm.
DS9 was just sort of like, we lost 30 crew members. Big deal. And then
Yeah.
I think, wasn't it the ship was the first one where we really dealt with that?
I don't remember if it was the first one, but it was definitely one where we dealt with it really well.
Yeah.
It was part of the story. People were impacted by it.
Yep.
They didn't just pretend like it meant nothing.
Right.
Yeah, it happened a few times on that show where they acknowledged
Yeah.
death. Just sort of like we talked about before, we didn't want to make, well, some people did, but generally we didn't want to make a Star Trek that was about them running out of resources and them just suffering, right? And this is kind of similar, which is we don't want to make this endlessly a show, dealing with death and having it being really dark. And that was never the plan. But you can't ignore it when people die.
Was it somebody we talked to recently who said about one of the original concepts for Voyager that was shot down was a horror survival show set in the Star Trek universe?
We were talking about that with somebody, and if it was at Comic-Con, it might have been with the co-executive producer of Prodigy, Aaron Waltke, who we did talk to for a while. I can't remember. It might have been that, but I believe that was like Ronald D. Moore's plan, right? Is he wanted a very different show, and of course he went on to make that show, and it's called Battlestar Galactica.
Which is a spectacular piece of television. Yeah.
But not Star Trek.
No, not at all. After the ceremony, one of the Marquis questions the captain, asking what she's going to do about their situation. His plan is to just give the Kazon what they want, which is technology. Mm-hmm. And when Janeway starts to speak, he interrupts, saying he knows all about the Prime Directive, but the Federation is 70,000 light years away. Janeway listens to his concerns, but says, "Let me make it absolutely clear. I will destroy this ship before I turn any part of it over to the Kazon." And she delivers that in the stern Janeway voice too, so you know she's serious.
Oh yeah.
Kate Mulgrew is just great at being able to portray this character in the way you would expect them to react in particular situations. And this is a great one where you see her go into, I am dead serious Janeway mode.
Right. Yeah, she's got a real talent for that stern voice.
Yeah.
The I'm in charge here voice. It doesn't seem false, right? She's very comfortable in it. And I think we've said that since the beginning, since episode 1, we felt like this woman's in charge.
Right.
Regardless of if she's a woman, but this person's in charge. She speaks with authority. She is decisive. She'll listen to you. Like she let this guy sort of talk over her. Yeah. She recognized the situation, but she's like, no, I'm in charge.
On the way out of the door, she quietly delivers probably one of the great burns to Chakotay, saying, "So this is how the Marquis would do it." And she says that quietly as well.
Such a burn.
Yes. The way she delivered that quietly, almost like nobody else would have been able to hear that. And that was aimed at Chakotay. It's like, these are your principles. These are the principles you're willing to stand behind.
Yes. I really liked how what she said in that moment was, the only choice here is to continue trying to survive and get home or blow up the ship. There is not a third choice where we hand over stuff to the Kazon. And so she was being very specific, and it's obviously attached to those Starfleet ideals. Yeah. And she was just trying to make clear to him, if we're going to do anything, we're going to die. Yeah. Is that the choice? And she just like turned around, see you later, and then she burns Chakotay on the way out the door. Classic.
I think maybe this is why I like her as a captain, because she's having to live up to it, versus Captain Picard, who doesn't have to live with these type of decisions.
I see your point. She has much different, much tougher leadership challenges, I think is maybe the word. Yeah. And you're right. She, at least so far, right? She is really standing up to them.
The one time I can think of when Picard is kind of presented with this, and we'll probably get letters telling me, well, the episodes that that I've forgotten about, is, again, First Contact. Sorry, spoilers. Where he's going to blow up the ship. He makes the decision.
And he does not want to up until that point. Mm-hmm.
Yep. But he also has an evacuation plan for the crew. And there's the joke about that try and stay out of history's way. So he knows his crew, at least a lot of his crew, can actually get off the ship and can get off safely. Whereas Janeway here, I feel it's like she's not provided with that luxury. If she has to blow up the ship and they have to evacuate, she doesn't know how many of her people could even survive in the Delta Quadrant.
And they don't have any allies to help them.
Right.
And there's no planet they could go to anymore because they had a few options in the past, but they're long past them now. So yeah, she is operating under some incredibly difficult circumstances. And of course, it's funny that we go week to week sort of resetting and everything's fine because that's not what would really happen. It would get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, it'd be cumulative. Yeah, right.
Yeah. But I see your point. She's facing some sort of leadership challenges that really nobody else in Star Trek is. We talked about it quite a bit on Deep Space Nine, how Sisko's challenges were different because he wasn't on the starship. Yeah. He was really, he was not even surrounded by people who were in the Federation except for the people in his crew.
Yeah.
So he had some different challenges and he was able to maybe be a little fast and loose sometimes with the rules. Right. And I think Janeway, it's like she's kind of on her way there, but she's not there yet.
And I maintain that's why Sisko got that posting.
Because, sure. I mean, that makes sense.
Because I think, I said it before, I think Sisko is a politician, captain, commander, leader, rather than a leader, captain, commander who does politics.
I will only preempt a few of the letters you might get or we might get to say that Picard definitely has to make some very tough choices.
Yes. Oh,
there are episodes where he has to make tough choices, but this is unique.
After the ceremony, Chakotay tells Janeway the crew feels like they haven't had a chance to voice their opinions. Janeway reminds him the ship is not a democracy.
I would like to say that I have said that before. In a position of leadership. This is not a democracy. I don't need to take a vote.
Chakotay does point out that the Starfleet people are prepared to die for these principles, but the Maquis are not. And I would point out that Chakotay, who is supposed to be giving an example to the Maquis crew?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hard on the Maquis here, but he's kind of not wrong, because there is a basic cultural difference. I'm sure some of the Maquis feel that there is a lot of hypocrisy on the Starfleet side.
Oh, for sure.
The way their colonies were basically sold out to the Cardassians. So I could see some of them maintaining that kind of harsh attitude about the Federation, but at the same time, living and working with members of the Federation, maybe some of them came over and would be like, this isn't that bad. Or maybe some of them are motivated by self-preservation. Of the best way of getting home is working with the professionals, i.e. Starfleet.
Yeah, and if no one is making any effort to sort of get that message out, or this is so stupid to me, Chakotay saying to Janeway, the crew feels like they're not heard. Dude, I don't know how many times I have to say this. It's your job to talk to the crew. That the first officer's job is that. Yeah. We heard about that on TNG. So why is he not having the right kind of conversations with people so that their voices can be heard? Yeah. And that he can then take those things to the captain. They can formulate an answer and he can come back to them and work through it. It's the very nature of leadership. He is so useless. He drives me crazy.
He should be delivering the message from the captain to the people.
Why did we put him in that role? For that reason, not for this.
Continuing, Chakotay suggests they need something in between the two extremes. He wants some flexibility in interpreting Starfleet protocols, but Janeway doesn't think their principles have let them down.
She's not wrong. Their principles have not let them down. They've maybe made some bad tactical decisions, but it's not the principles at this point. I can see why she's defensive about that at this juncture, but also she's got to be having some internal conflicts. Like, this isn't working, this can't go on.
Yeah. Even if you just do the math, she's got to be going, wait a minute, I've had 8 people seriously injured in 4 weeks. Yeah. I've had 3 killed. If I extrapolate this out, I'm going to have no crew left in 8 months.
But I think it's a little bit awkward how they play this scene because they go into that memorial service right after having this conversation about how every single thing is broken. Yeah. But we go into that memorial service and it seems like everything's fine, right? There's nothing, we don't see any damage. Nobody's running around trying to solve any problems. If we were now having this conversation and the lights were going out, or they were concerned about another sneak attack or something, and there was actually bad stuff happening around them, this conversation, I think, would have fit a little bit better.
Right.
Instead, she's going, everything's great. I don't even know what you're talking about. He's right. Everything is not great.
No.
But they should have shown it, I think, a bit more in the episode.
I do think as well they missed an opportunity here for showing Chakotay as a leader. That Chakotay should have been the one stepping in, if you like, after the captain talked to that guy. And Chakotay should have been the one saying to him, we discussed this. This isn't an option open for debate. I've talked to you about this. This is a Federation ship. We follow the captain's lead.
And she's kept us alive thus far.
Yeah,
and we
exactly.
have to trust in it.
Right.
But then he can also say, but trust me to talk to her.
Right, yes. And then he can have these conversations with the captain and basically say, what the hell are you doing? This isn't working. That kind of thing.
He sucks. He's a terrible first officer. Just terrible.
Chakotay's suggestion is an alliance with one of the Kazon factions. Janeway says, there's nothing we've been through with them that shows they're trustworthy. And
Right.
I think it's fair to say everything we have seen of them shows they are not.
Mm-hmm.
He then accuses her of being small-minded and piles on a little guilt, saying she's responsible for making decisions in the best interests of the crew, and tells her to ask herself if she's doing that.
That's when that guy is fired so fast. Get out. You are not even trying to help at this point.
Yeah.
You are trying to push an agenda that comes from a minority of the crew, and you are being a real jerk about it.
Chakotay, you're not helping.
No, he's not helping. I encounter these people frequently, and I knew this would happen when we started this show.
Yeah.
Where they're so busy trying to ship these two characters that they miss everything else about it, right? And that is not, to me, I don't watch Star Trek for the romantic encounters.
Yeah.
I don't mind them, but this is not why I watch Star Trek. I don't care about that. And for me, it's especially now, as I am older and more experienced on the business side than I was when I originally watched the show. But I am so much more interested in getting things done and leadership and the positivity about Trek, the things that maybe we talk about quite a bit generally about the positive future.
Right.
So whenever people come at me about this shipping stuff, it makes me crazy. Because it's you are so missing the point of whether or not those two should have some kind of a romantic relationship. Yeah. I just know, first of all, she can do so much better.
I don't want this to be moonlighting.
Oh, my good God, and destroy it. But it doesn't make any sense to me that people are so focused on that. It is just, no, he is the first officer, and he sucks at that. That's the thing that I see the most.
Right. Have I dated myself by saying moonlighting?
Probably. Yeah, because that was before this by quite a bit, wasn't it? Yeah.
And by the way, I hated moonlighting.
Well, I liked moonlighting until they got together, and then it was dumb. It just fell apart.
Yeah. Janeway now goes to see her more reasonable advisor, Commander Tuvok. She tells him of Chakotay's idea to form an alliance, and saying this goes against everything she believes and everything her experience has taught her. Tuvok talks about a time that Spock recommended an alliance between the Federation and the Klingons. This caused a huge dispute within the Federation and the Klingon Empire, but it eventually brought 200 years of stability to the Quadrant. People can see Undiscovered Country for more about that. The controversial idea was the cornerstone of peace, and Janeway points out that it's not exactly the same thing. Tuvok agrees, but says it would be a temporary alliance because they're on the way out of the Quadrant anyway, and he says this could bring stability and an appreciation of peace in the Quadrant. I am a little worried here because this does harken back to something Janeway said in Prime Factors. The Vulcans can use logic to justify anything. I feel that Janeway has warmed to this idea and is just going to see Tuvok because he'll figure out some logical way to say, excellent idea, Captain, I fully agree. Logically, it makes sense.
Well, I mean, he could use logic to justify either side, really. I don't think he's wrong in this scenario, especially when he talks about how a little bit of stability could bring an appreciation for more stability.
Yeah.
I do think that's true. That's just, that just makes sense. So I think he's being quite logical. And she was just looking for a non-emotional conversation because her conversation with Chakotay was charged on both sides. She was mad, he was mad. They were both being emotional. So she comes here to him because she knows he's not going to be. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean she's going to do whatever he says. But I liked his reaction here. You didn't like it?
I was just thinking back to Prime Factors. The Vulcans are very good at justifying things using logic. So you could make the argument, though, that Tuvok was correctly reading the situation and was giving Janeway an out. That you could logically justify this because of things that happened in the past with the Klingons and the Federation. At the same time, maybe if Tuvok picked up that, she was opposed to this, he could have said, yeah, terrible idea.
Okay.
Janeway's now holding a senior staff meeting and tells them she's decided to form an alliance. Harry, ever the Starfleet cheerleader, does not agree, but Janeway just shuts him down. Neelix does have a suggestion about a contact he has on a nearby planet called Cerberus. The guy owes him some favors, and it could be a good way to get a reading on the possibility of an alliance without facing any confrontation. This is a good idea, and Janeway agrees to it. Harry suggests they contact Seska as a joke, but B'Elanna thinks this might actually be a good idea. Unsurprisingly, Chakotay thinks it's a terrible idea, and Janeway points out that you can't have it both ways. If you want to get in the mud, you can't start complaining you get dirty. Second burn of Chakotay in this episode.
Yeah, I'm glad she's gotten a couple of zingers back onto him.
Yeah.
I did think the way she spoke to Harry wasn't necessarily great leadership.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the point was correct, but maybe how she did it wasn't quite right. Because I think she could have said, look, I agree with you. This isn't something that we would do normally, but we're in this situation and we have to take some extreme measures.
Right.
And I'm accepting that responsibility. I think she should have done that a little bit differently.
We now have a plan, but Janeway is clearly uneasy about it.
Oh, yeah.
Cullen and Seska immediately respond to the call from Voyager and agree to a meeting. Janeway sighs after this call, as she does many times in this episode.
She really does.
I thought we could have at least got a good eye roll out of this.
I think every time we hear from Seska, I would expect an eye roll from Janeway. Like, oi, why do I have to talk to this person?
Neelix is now meeting with his Kazon acquaintance in what I think is a Kazon Hooters, and asks if his friends Marge would be interested in an alliance with the Federation. But before he can get an answer, two armed Kazon grab Neelix and drag him out. His friend is great here, because he just totally pretends he has no idea who Neelix is.
I've never seen this guy before.
Just started rambling, no idea who he is.
Yeah, I did like that.
On Voyager, Cullen and Janeway are negotiating. Janeway agrees that the Nistrum can tell everyone they're allied with Voyager, and in return, Janeway will provide support in the way of food, medicine, and clothing. But they will not provide weapons or technology. Still a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
Cullen proposes an exchange of crew members. Seska tries to stop this line of negotiation, but he will not relent. And then he says he won't let a woman dictate terms to him.
Whoops.
And that was a very unwise thing to say, as Janeway just shuts down the negotiations. Cullen tells Tuvok, talk to her. This works.
Dude.
Yeah, this does not work. This is even worse, as negotiations have now completely broken down.
You are barking up the wrong tree.
I wonder if Seska is having Cardassia flashbacks with this overt sexism.
Oh my God.
You know how the Cardassians are.
Yeah, she's had to accept it here. If she's going to be on a Kazon ship, she has to put up with it. But Janeway does not.
Yeah. Although I could see the hostage thing as being part of Kazon culture. Like in medieval Europe, family members were exchanged to ensure loyalty. So if you broke your oath, your family members were going to get it.
Oh, nice.
So I could see the Kazon doing this and it working for the Kazon for the very simple reason the other side is going to have no qualms about killing your people. But they're dealing with the Federation. And through Seska, they'd know there's no way Janeway would execute Kazon hostages if they broke the deal.
Yeah, except he's not listening to Seska.
Oh.
He knows better.
Well, yes, that's true. But he's probably smart enough to know that. But it's a good question.
Not.
He's not smart enough to figure that one out.
No. He listens to her to a point, and then he goes rogue because he's the genius.
I actually just had an idea. This could actually work because they could always rely on Lon Sutter to actually execute the Kazon hostages. We don't meet him for a couple of episodes.
Oh, you forget I don't remember 99% of what happens.
Oh, we got 2 episodes before he's introduced. He's a great character.
I know it's coming in the next episode.
Oh, yeah.
Because I just watched it recently. During the pandemic. So I do remember.
On Sobor, Neelix is thrown into a cave with a group of prisoners. They are a very typical bunch of Star Trek people, all dressed in flowing costumes with babies and children.
Yeah, at the very least, though, they weren't all dressed in rags. Their costumes were pretty nice, I noticed.
Central Wardrobe had some good costumes that week.
I think that's done on purpose, based on what we find out about these people later.
Yes. He quickly makes a friend of somebody called Mabus, who says they are the Trabe.
Right.
The infamous race we heard of earlier. I did notice this group doesn't have the wild hair of the Kazon, but they seem to have some facial markers that are a little similar.
Right.
Mabus tells Neelix they were attacked 5 days ago in space and brought here. He says they've lost several people, including their governing council, and he's the only one left. Mabus tells him there is help on the way and asks if they can count on Neelix to help them escape. Voyager now arrives at the coordinates to rendezvous with Neelix, and I notice it looks like it's in perfect condition. Everything's been repaired.
I know. No damage.
Do you think they have those little repair droids that Discovery introduced to us too, that they've had all along, but nobody actually mentioned it?
Yes, I think they have to in order for this to be true. Yeah. But there's no way they would have had those effects. And also, we didn't think of it until Discovery.
Yes. Yeah, the effects were probably too expensive. Unfortunately, there's no sign of Neelix.
Neelix has been a lot less annoying lately.
Yeah.
And he's been helpful. Really, ever since they got over that jealousy thing.
Yeah.
They really have turned him around.
Definitely. He was very useful in this episode, and he actually has been useful several episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Janeway says they will wait 2 hours, and if Neelix doesn't show up, they're going to the planet. In engineering, the Maquis crew members are asking B'Elanna what is going on, but she says there's nothing going on, as the talks with Seska fell apart. Maquis guy says, you were friends with her, why can't you call her? And B'Elanna is like, no. Shuts him right down.
Yeah.
She tells him Seska isn't who they thought she was, and she cannot be trusted. He says, I suppose you agree with our captain, and he puts quite a bit of an edge on the way he says captain there.
Captain.
B'Elanna defends the captain and tells him to get his ass back to work. But in the background, another Maquis is listening, and so we know this guy's up to no good.
Yeah. They wouldn't show him if it wasn't going to come up again later.
I will ask, why would these guys want anything to do with Seska?
Yeah.
Don't they know she's a Cardassian? Everything we've heard about the Cardassian behavior towards the settlers that the Federation left behind was appalling. So, given the chance, you'd throw in your lot with a deceitful Cardassian spy who worked on the side that was murdering your family.
Yeah, because the fights were really with the Cardassians.
Yes.
So, I hadn't thought about that, but you're right.
And all the stories, it's the Cardassians murdering their family members. So just from a practical standpoint, this was someone who was lying to you, had their own agenda, and you're saying, oh yeah, we can trust them.
Yeah, she betrayed you way more than Janeway ever did.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess
that's a good point.
Perhaps we're seeing here that the Maquis did not have a lot of the best people.
Not your best and brightest.
Yeah. Down in the prison cave, we hear some noises, and the Trabe rescue party has arrived. Neelix aids in the escape by carrying a small child, I think it was 2 feet?
Yeah. Neelix, will you help us? Of course. Picks up a child. Oh, I'll take him. What just happened?
I guess every little helps, you know. Back on Voyager, they're still waiting for Neelix, so they're going to head to the planet. But before they can leave, Harry picks up an armada of Kazon ships. Instead of running away, they order Red Alert and put it on screen and go into the commercial. Wouldn't it be a really good time to run away?
Yeah, I was surprised they didn't run. I didn't, of course, because I don't remember anything. I didn't remember what was happening here. And I thought that, I was like, what do you mean on screen? Run away as fast as you can is the right order.
Yeah, how fast can you get warp? We did actually get some good visual effects here. I did like it when we saw that armada of the Kazon. I think I counted 14. Back from the break, and we get a hail from the lead ship. And Neelix introduces his new friend, Mabus. These are not Kazon ships. They are the Trabe. And the Kazon stole all the ones that they have. Janeway looks very relieved. This was practically a you are most welcome moment.
From Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that too. Like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, Janeway's going to be going, finally, something going our way. Now at dinner, Mabus is telling the story of how he was 8 years old when it all started. He said he wasn't even particularly aware of the Kazon. They were living in restricted areas, which children weren't even allowed to go near. They lived in poverty, and he didn't know they were persecuted by the police. He said he was told they were violent and dangerous and had to be kept isolated. His people treated them like animals and encouraged them to fight amongst themselves so they wouldn't turn on the Trabe.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah. But in the end, this just turned the Kazon into a violent and angry army. We still don't learn here if they shared a homeworld with the Trabe, or whether the Trabe were conquerors or the Kazon were imported slaves. We don't get answers to those questions.
No.
I wonder, though, because of the facial
similarities?
Yeah, that the implication is that they both evolved on this world.
Yeah, I mean, now listening to you describe it back, it feels to me like they're basically meant to be the same people, but they look different.
Yeah. He says he remembers when it all went wrong and he escaped with a friend's family. It happened so fast. 1 minute he was a happy child, and next he was an orphan exiled in space. Janeway is very happy to have met someone that she believes is a kindred spirit, someone who is reasonable, educated, and searching for a home. Mabus tells her the Kazon will not allow the Trabe to settle anywhere, and this has been going on for 30 years. At this point, most of the Trabe who punished the Kazon are long dead. So the Kazon are basically pursuing an agenda of genocide against the Trabe.
Yeah. But it also seems like the Trabe essentially stopped them from evolving, stopped them, at least stopped their ancestors, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like the Kazon have a lot of resentment and baggage left over from their treatment by the Trabe.
Well, yes, but also clearly they were not allowed education, so they weren't going to evolve in terms of, I guess, their appreciation for each other and for history. And so, of course, they were just going to get mad, take the ships, and start shooting.
Right. I assume this is in engineering, and we see the marquee crewman from earlier making a clandestine call to the Kazon to talk to Seska. The Kazon he gets on the phone says he'll give Seska the message. Again, you're calling your worst enemy.
Yeah. I do like this guy's sort of, I'll tell her you called. I'm not sure I believe you.
I'll write down a post-it. Some marquee guy called.
Yeah.
Neelix is now telling Chakotay, Janeway, and Tuvok that before the uprising, the Trabe were a highly evolved species, and their technology was amongst the finest in the quadrant. Apparently, nobody knew what the Trabe were doing to the Kazon because they were rich, powerful, and they could control the media, so no one wanted to mess up trading access. Wow, does that sound like the real world or what?
It certainly does, though it should have sent up a bunch of red flags for Janeway.
Yeah.
Because much of what is kind of going on with the Kazon is a lack of change with the status quo. They've just they got into a rut and they stayed there, but now they have ships, and so they're turning into pirates.
Yeah, they defeated the Trabe, but they've reverted back to sort of their worst instinct.
Right, but she's making the mistake of thinking that the Trabe are different and that they have actually changed and evolved.
Yeah.
And she's not even questioning it, or any of them. They're really not questioning it. And it's funny because it's like when you start talking to someone and you think, well, this is a reasonable person. I'm a reasonable person. We must think the same way.
Right. And certainly he's giving off a very reasonable veneer here.
Yeah, and he's doing it on purpose, and it's working.
But that's very much a Federation Starfleet way.
Yeah.
They do want to believe the best in people.
They do.
And he is certainly presenting a very favorable view of the Trabe.
And I wonder, how did he get the idea, I guess, to do this? Did it come from something Neelix said, or had he already been thinking this because he knew that the Kazon were fighting with Voyager?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm thinking maybe some of these attacks that Voyager's been experiencing, were they always the Kazon? Were the Trabe trying to force this?
Oh, because it's the same ships, yeah.
They didn't realize they were the Trabe.
I love it when you overanalyze and you find a really deep thing that probably didn't happen, but could have. That's good.
It could go either way. I mean, this guy could be a master planner. I mean, it would fit for the opposite of the Kazon that this guy is thinking a plan out 12 steps in advance. Or it could be he's just, an absolute opportunist.
Yeah, I think based on the plan that's coming yet, he's maybe not a master planner.
Yeah.
Maybe he's an opportunist, but
right.
We'll talk about that when we get there.
Chakotay thinks it seems that the Trabe have learned their lessons and have acknowledged the mistakes of their history. Tuvok worries that forming an alliance with the Trabe could cause the Kazon to unite against us as a common enemy. Janeway does correctly point out they already hate us and still can't work together. Very valid point.
Right.
Janeway is still resistant to an alliance, but she believes the Trabe are their best option, saying, "We will lead with trust until proven otherwise." And that is Starfleet and the Federation right there.
Yeah. These guys look more like us. I'm sure it's fine. They're very polite. They do dress well. And they're not, at least they don't seem to be misogynistic. So they must be good people. Well.
He's got a nice suit. How bad can he be?
Yeah.
In sickbay, the Doctor is treating Trabe children, and Janeway proposes to Mabus an alliance to travel together while it makes sense, and maybe they can get out of Kazon territory. Mabus is interested, but he has a bolder idea. He proposes they meet with all the Kazon factions to try and forge a peace accord. Over on Cullen and Seska's ship, they learn that Voyager has formed an alliance with the Trabe. They have a big fight about how he blew the negotiations with his backwards, sexist attitude, and also the fact that he's an incompetent Nepo kid trading on his grandfather's reputation.
Oh, right.
I do love the line from Seska where she says, "One day that attitude will be your undoing."
I hope so.
He threatens Seska a bit, but she says, "What are you going to do? I'm carrying your child." So, I guess he doesn't know about just Chakotay sperm sample?
I guess he doesn't know about that. I guess they don't have cameras.
She'll break the news to him later, I'm sure of it.
When it comes out looking like Chakotay, like in, what was the episode where...
Oh, yes.
With Ducat on Deep Space Nine, where the baby came out half Cardassian. I almost fell off my chair laughing.
Yeah, the Paraith cult living on Empok Nor. Oh, yeah. Classic.
I mean, I laughed so hard when that baby looked like him because I just didn't see it coming. And it'll be the same here. The baby will come out looking like Chakotay, and Cullen will just go, what? I'm sure she has a plan, though. She's smarter than that.
Yes, she has a plans within plans.
Yeah, Cullen's not going to be around long enough to see that.
Seska tells him she's got a crew member on Voyager now willing to share info. Cullen does not want to go to the conference, but Seska thinks it would be stupid not to. He would be able to learn what was happening. I'm guessing here, the Kazon that the Voyager guy talked to didn't pass this up the chain of command to Cullen. All of the subordinate Kazon, do they all actually really work for Seska? It's like, tell her everything first. Don't tell Cullen anything. He's dumb as a brush.
I mean, if she's as smart as she seems, yes, I think that probably is happening.
Yeah. And I think she'd only tell Cullen when she has to, because I would be 99% certain this dumbass would brag to the other Kazon about having an inside man and ruin everything.
No, she's too smart for that.
As they are planning for the Kazon Trabe Summit, Neelix has learned that some mercenaries called the Takrit were arrested with a sketch of the conference site. Someone is looking to sabotage it, probably one of the other Marges looking to wipe out their rivals. Tuvok observes someone will undoubtedly leave before the bad things happen, which is a pretty good plan.
Well, is that the only view of this? I mean, also maybe somebody wouldn't turn up, or maybe somebody had a different plan that they could utilize. They could be trying to replace their Maj.
Yeah, there are multiple ideas there.
I think this is quite weak to just go, oh, well, then we'll know who did it because they'll get up and leave early. Well,
plus,
unless there was a different plan.
Okay, let's look at something else. We know the Kazon will go on a suicide mission if it benefits
We do know that.
What about one of your warriors? If you go, you will be the most honored elite.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's just funny to think this is the only possible way this would happen, yeah.
And as you point out, the Kazon internally are backstabbing. So, yeah, it could be the second Maj would be the one going, you go along, boss, everything's going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
Chakotay does suggest that Janeway shouldn't go, but she wants to be part of bringing peace to the Quadrant, saying they'll be vigilant and still go.
She absolutely could have said, yeah, you go.
Yeah, you go, Chakotay. What's the worst that could happen?
You go, take a couple other Maquis with you.
Yeah.
And we'll be fine.
Take that whiny guy from the...
Yeah, take the guy I don't like.
It's now time for the conference, and Neelix's friend from earlier has helped him set up the room. He's acting a little squirrely, but he seems above board.
He is.
The Kazon Majors begin to arrive, and we get a good look at the actual different styles of each Kazon sect. Some of them were actually dressed, I thought, really well. I think there was one guy in blue who sort of had an awesome outfit. It looks like the Nistrum are the only ones that really have embraced peasantry as a look.
Yes. Well, maybe that's intentional. That I don't mean that they're intentionally trying to look like peasants, but maybe that's an intentional part of the story.
Yeah.
Is to show that they are the ones maybe who are suffering the most.
Oh, good point. I did notice there don't seem to be many Kazon sects, though.
No. There's like
I'm
3?
guessing budgetary constraints?
Yeah.
I personally would have loved to have seen a dozen squabbling Kazon.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, if you got to group them together, they'd all be puffing out their chests and trying to appear tougher than the others and all showing off.
Like when they had all those Ferengi together in early Deep Space Nine, who they all wanted to be the next Nagus.
Yeah. Well, everyone seems a bit hostile and suspicious, so pretty much what we expected. But Janeway is very sincere. The Kazon are quite understandably bitter about the Trabe, and Cullen says they can't believe a woman or a Trabe. He says, you've allied yourself with the greatest villain this quadrant has ever known. Wouldn't that be the Kazon?
No, they're just pirates. I think that's the point, right? Is that the Trabe is an organized villain.
Oh. Well,
whereas the Kazon, they're just a bunch of dudes.
They're just pirates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the reputation of Voyager is helped by the Kazon spreading fake news. Although, I think anybody believing the Kazon would be technically what's known as an idiot.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Mabus now interrupts the discussion and says, let me confer with my Federation colleagues, and steps away from the table.
Uh-oh.
Janeway immediately realizes that Mabus is the one who set up a trap, and tells everyone to take cover as she calls for a beam out. A small Trabe ship appears outside the window and begins firing. Fortunately, the Cabe have not yet discovered missiles.
Yeah, that's also in my notes. Like, I get it. It's a great storytelling device that the ship is going to appear outside the window. But why wouldn't they just shoot a torpedo in there?
Yeah, or even projectile weapons.
Destroy the building from space. I mean, come on.
Or crash the ship into the building.
Yes, yeah. So many ways they could have just destroyed everything. Yeah. I actually found that quite funny. I was like, come on now. We were doing really well until we got to that. It's like, now it's silly.
Yeah, you just rock up and fire phasers. Come on, people. Okay, overanalysis.
Yeah.
Maybe this is why the Trabe failed. Because tactically, they're useless.
Got too comfy in their mansions.
Yep.
Forgot that they still needed to be, I guess, militaristic in some way.
Yeah, at least have a clue. Maybe they even used the Kazon as their foot soldiers.
That's just what I was going to say, yeah. Maybe they thought the Kazon would protect them. It's like, no. Yeah.
Did not work out well.
Okay, that's an interesting thought, yeah.
From orbit, Voyager fires 3 photon torpedoes, which somehow do absolutely no damage to this tiny little ship. But they do make it retreat.
Yeah, what the hell with that? We wasted 3 torpedoes.
These are some amazing shields. I mean, I think maybe before they'd started any of this, they should have traded some of the Trabe shield technology, because that is pretty impressive.
I think they should have destroyed that ship. I think they should have let it be destroyed in the story.
That would have put a little bit more of an edge on the relationship with the Trabe.
Yes. Yep.
On Voyager, Mabus is livid that Voyager interrupted his plan for peace.
Yeah, his plan for peace.
Which was to decimate the Kazon leadership, setting them back years. Janeway is also furious that Mabus used her, but he says, you don't know the Kazon. Violence is all they understand. He calls her naive and says what he was doing would have helped her too. But she just says, I'm not grateful. Now get off my ship. Oh, angry Janeway.
Angry Janeway, yeah.
This was a little more pulled back, but it reminded me when Avery Brooks would do just the morally outraged Sisko. And you would just see that sort of righteous fury from him. This, I thought, was similar, but she pulled it back a little bit.
Yeah.
Before he beams out, he does say, how can one ship, meaning Voyager, hope to survive? Because the Kazon will be seeking revenge.
Thanks to you.
But the Kazon hated them anyway.
Yeah, they haven't really lost anything.
The Kazon don't unite in the first place. I mean, you have this Trabe here, who are their greatest enemy, who the Kazon are basically pursuing a genocide against, and the Kazon haven't banded together to wipe them out.
It's because they have leaders like Cullen, that's why. That dude is not smart.
That's true, yeah. They're relying on the bottom of the pile hierarchy. Janeway says she's not making deals with executioners, and they beam him away. Janeway calls the bridge, telling them, get us out of here. So, after all that, we've not gained any allies, we've picked up another enemy, and the Kazon double hate you now.
Yeah.
So business as usual, really. They're now holding a staff meeting, where Janeway warns them we need to be prepared for constant attacks. But the ship is repaired, food supplies are good, and they should be able to travel for a long distance without stopping. Janeway now delivers something of a classic Star Trek speech. I won't put the full thing in, but I love the ending of it. She concludes with, in a part of space with few rules, it's more important than ever that we hold fast to our own. In a region of space where shifting allegiances are commonplace, we have to have something stable to rely on. And we do. The principles and ideals of the Federation. As far as I'm concerned, those are the best allies we could have. The end.
And didn't you think she was doing that thing where she'd like point at her eyes and then point to Chakotay with the 2 fingers? Like, your ideas just made this worse. See, I was right and you were wrong.
Chakotay, this is why the Maquis all ended up getting wiped out by the Dominion. You idiot.
I mean, that's what she was saying. Without saying it, she was like, no, I was right in the first place. Yeah. But she might not be, but that is what she was saying.
I think Janeway here is just so very, very Starfleet in the Federation. It's like...
She is.
It's also like they don't even consider what lengths a people facing genocide by a violent hostile race would actually do. I mean, the Trabe are facing annihilation, and I wouldn't expect them to try talking their way out with their executioners. So... is this idea just completely alien to Starfleet and the Federation?
No.
Is Starfleet being naive here?
Well, I think You could look at it that way, that sometimes those ideals just simply aren't going to work.
Yeah.
And you also have to accept that you're in a part of space where there are no humans or any of the other races that are a part of the Federation. So these are people who are going to think differently. Yeah. That is something that we need to accept, but I don't think we have. So you certainly could look at it that way. Or you could also look at it like what we were talking about earlier, which is that Janeway's being tested in a way that no other captain has, or that we've seen any other captain be tested. Yeah. And they're making her so that she is clinging to those ideals. She truly believes them, but she's also human, and she's scared because she should be scared.
Long way from home.
Because of the situation they're in, and she's got no backup and no one she can talk to, really. So maybe she's just making some human mistakes. Yeah. She's following it up by reverting back to her principles and believing in them. This is not the first time she's believed the smooth-talking guy in front of her.
It's true, and it's also not the first time the Federation's done that. I mean, I'm thinking of, remember that TNG episode of that planet that was trying to get Federation membership, and they were hiding the fact they had all those genetically modified soldiers that they were just trying to, put on an island and forget about, and Picard discovered that?
Oh. The one I was thinking of was the one where I can't remember if they were separate planets, but one group of people was or they were keeping another group of people addicted to drugs. Yeah. And the Prime Directive sort of stopped them from being able to intervene.
I was thinking specifically, the deliberate misleading and the Federation wanting to believe the best. Although I guess Janeway did dial it back with look, we'll believe them, we'll trust them until we don't.
Until we don't, yeah.
So I guess she isn't naive, but she's trying to hold the principles of Starfleet and the Federation, but she's not holding them to a fault.
Well, she can't, and you never should.
And I guess neither did Picard.
Sometimes. All right, well, we've done a lot of overanalysis, but do you have more overanalysis?
Yes, I have a few things. The first one is, how many ships do the Trabe have?
Yeah, I don't know.
We learned the Kazon, the biggest Kazon sect, I think had 18 ships, and this Trabe Armada has 14. Is this all the Trabe? Is this all of them that's left? Or is this one part of the Trabe?
I thought it was just one part based on something he said.
So if each section of the Trabe has 14 ships, can't they band together and go on a Kazon eradication trek? Or again, is both their strategy and their tactics bad?
That seems like a safe bet at this point. Yeah. There must be something wrong with what they're doing.
Right.
Or they must be outnumbered.
Yeah.
It is possible that just in terms of sheer number of people, they're outnumbered.
Yeah, I think you're right. I get the impression that on the Trabe Kazon homeworld, that maybe there were a lot more Kazon than the Trabe, and they were deliberately keeping them down. Yeah. And then when it maybe even using them, like I said, as soldiers, as a cannon fodder. And then when the uprising did happen, they were massively outnumbered.
Yeah, that makes sense. Takes a little headcanon, but
we can get there.
You can get there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Next thing, clandestine comms to Seska. Please install some security. I mean, we know some of the techniques that the Marquis used to hide comms. Couldn't we be looking for that?
Again, in that episode Maneuvers, we were annoyed that we just weren't expecting Seska, which was absolutely ridiculous. So you have to be expecting that someone is going to try to talk to Seska.
Right.
Yeah.
Or even talking to another race.
Or talking to somebody else. Yeah,
having their own agenda. Is this down to, I know we've talked about it with DS9, DS9 had the problem of security because it wasn't a Starfleet ship. On a Starfleet ship, is everyone expecting everyone to trust each other? Because why wouldn't they?
I think so because remember, Odo was monitoring people's communications and Bashir was like, wait, you're not monitoring my communications, are you? Remember? So I think maybe that is true on a starship like this.
It's like, we're all family. Why wouldn't we trust you?
But of course, you're not all family because you've also got these Maquis on here. So, but if it's just not part of protocol, and it's like in that show I was watching yesterday about the woman trying to save the woodlands, near her in the UK. And she was talking about how she just never anticipated that other people would be actively trying to destroy it and not caring that somebody was trying to save it.
Yeah.
And in the same way here, if it's not part of normal protocol to monitor everybody's activities because we trust each other, we're all part of Starfleet, we're evolved to be part of it.
Yeah.
But now you should be watching it because you don't have only Starfleet people on the ship. But it just doesn't occur to them that Right? Because Janeway says something at one point about why would they be actively working against us? We're all trying to get home. Like she couldn't fathom it.
Yeah.
So this is similar, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
She can't fathom. Why would anybody call Seska? Well...
You just made me think of something there. Perhaps this is the guy they put in charge of monitoring comms.
Oh, that's his job.
Yeah.
Everything looks good.
You put a marquee in charge of monitoring.
Greens across the board. Everything's fine.
Oh, dear.
That's a good point.
Next thing, leading on from that, why would Seska have any trust in this guy? Because Seska is a huge threat to Voyager. She's providing invaluable assistance to the Kazon. It would be even more if she didn't work for a complete idiot. So taking her out of the picture strategically would be a huge advantage. And I'm pretty sure if that plan came up to Janeway and Chakotay, especially Chakotay, they would be like, okay, let's get her on comms, we'll lure her somewhere, and we'll take her into custody, because she's too dangerous to be out helping the Kazon. So from her perspective, being a spy, being a version of Garrick, wouldn't that be like the first thing she would jump to?
That she would expect it was a trap?
Yes.
Well, and maybe she does.
Yeah, I guess we don't know enough.
We don't know enough.
Yeah, not yet. Anyway.
But she also might believe that someone else on that ship wants off as badly as she did.
I suppose if it's another Marquis,
Yeah, someone she was buddy-buddy with, yeah.
And was stupid, not realizing she
Yeah, I was going to say that. Is not really smart enough to care about what was going on there.
Right.
I mean, you wouldn't believe Chakotay, but maybe you'd believe this guy.
Right. But even then, it would be like, they could be trying to kidnap me. I guess she would have to, she's pretty smart. She'd probably balance out how she would meet them or whatever.
Right.
Next thing, dealing with the Kazon. Why on earth would you ever deal with the Kazon anyway? They could promise you anything, say anything. Oh, one of our colonies, it needs some medical help. Could you stop in there? And can you wait a couple of days because we're building a giant armada to ambush you when you arrive there? That's totally the thing they're going to do. You're not Kazon. You're scum. The Kazon hate each other. I could see them doing that to another Kazon sect and stealing all their ships.
I think this is a good example of something that it is a really big thing that they're trying to tell, a big story where we're going to get together, we're going to create this summit, we're going to negotiate peace. Yeah. But we're going to do it in 46 minutes. So there's a lot of things that we're going to cut in order to get to that story that we want. And I think that's one of them. Like, there would be a lot of debate and disagreement, and it would be really difficult to convince the Kazon to turn up. And you'd have to find a place that was really neutral and secure. Yeah. There'd be a lot of work that would have to go into it. And also, why would you just not have a conference call, so everybody was secure in their own ships and whatever?
Because that's a good point, because wouldn't you imagine, let's say one of the other smaller Kazon sect wasn't invited. First of all, they could see that as an absolute insult. Yeah. And second of all, they could be looking at it as, hey, if we get one of our guys to crash into the building, killing all the other Kazon leaders, we can then swoop in and try and bring all the other sects in with us.
Yeah, and we can't ignore the fact that Voyager has been traveling for a season and a half, trying to get out of this version or this area of space. Yeah. So why would all the Kazons who have ships just be available in this region? Right. Some of the stuff doesn't make sense, but I think is important for time.
I think if you made the Kazon more nomadic, they were traveling in Voyager's direction because it was in their benefit.
Yeah, that would make a little bit more sense. I liked a little bit, there was the thing that Janeway said where when Chakotay said, maybe you shouldn't go to this summit, and she was just like, no, I want to be part of bringing peace to this sector. Yeah. Was that a little bit of ego on her part? Oh. Like, I want to be the Spock of this. Yeah. Right?
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, that would be something a Starfleet captain would do.
That definitely.
Let me show how important I am.
If Jellicoe had been there, he would have been the one beaming down for the...
Yeah, it's more of an admiral move.
Yeah. It could go either way. I would think that she would want to be there to show how serious Starfleet was, that the captain was there to negotiate. Yeah. But at the same time, wanting to be the person who brought peace to a quadrant would definitely be something that would appeal to a Starfleet captain.
Yes.
And my final point. Neelix's squirrely little friend.
Yes.
Was he involved in the plot? After all, if his mage was killed, Did this provide an opportunity for him to step up and take the Major's place?
Maybe. He seemed like he was just interested in self-preservation.
Yeah.
But, I mean, maybe because they made a real point of him not being terribly smart.
Right.
Yeah, because he couldn't do the puzzle he was looking at in the beginning. Well, sure.
I could see.
Could have been.
Yeah, I could see, him, especially as he seemed kind of nervous and a little bit twitchy.
Although he's the one who told Neelix about the plot.
Oh.
So if he hadn't told him, there'd be a better chance of it happening.
Yeah. Right.
I also thought it was funny that they were talking about a sketch made. Somebody's making a sketch
Can you
with
memorize
a pencil.
it,
Yeah. That was funny.
Just draw like a triangle table with a room. There you go. That's where it's being held.
Here's the window you can shoot through.
Yeah, shoot through the window.
It's just a rectangle.
All right. So was that a Trabe ship or was that mercenaries?
100% that was a Trabe ship.
Yeah. Okay. If they just invented high explosives, things could have been a lot different.
Yeah, he could have just come in there with a bomb or something. Didn't even look like there was any security.
Right.
Because they could beam in and out. I don't know. It was a questionable plan, but I guess the Trabe think the Kazon were too dumb to catch it.
Yeah, I think maybe the Trabe are actually, when it comes to tactical decisions, terrible.
Yeah, it's possible.
And that wraps up my overanalysis. Over to you, Kim.
The only thing I have an overanalysis, because
Yes.
we've already talked about so many things, is I'm at this juncture in this show where it's making me a bit uncomfortable because
Really?
I don't like to see Starfleet lose over and over and over. And we lose every time. All we do in each episode is, we try to get some allies, we don't get any. We try to get some resources, we don't get any. Everything is a failure.
Yeah.
I'm starting to find that a little bit frustrating, and I hope we get something positive at some point.
Do you remember how you felt watching it originally?
Not about this, no.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly
Yeah.
if this hit me in the same way. I mean, I've watched a lot more Star Trek since then than what I had watched at that point. I had essentially only watched Next Gen.
Yeah, Next Gen was a lot more positive, yeah.
We're just getting beat up a lot, and I'd like the good guys to win once.
Yeah.
I think it's a feeling that started with the Eye of the Needle episode, where it was like, oh, we're going to get a break. Okay, great. Nope. That guy's dead. It never happened.
Yeah, that guy's dead and it's 20 years in the past. Yeah. Interesting.
Every sign of hope, we squish it. I know there's some hope coming, but it hasn't happened yet.
Maybe my view of it is influenced by having a much better memory. Or I've rewatched a lot more episodes.
Oh, well, maybe. Yeah, that would make sense.
There's a lot more of it that I can remember, the positives and the good stuff, and the things going Voyager's way for a change.
Okay.
I don't remember feeling that way
Maybe.
back in the day.
We're just kicked in the teeth at every turn.
If you look at it coldly like that, it is, okay, guys, can you catch a break?
Yeah, we need a break. Yeah, we need something good to happen.
Even
Absolutely.
the good guys, remember the planet of the hedonists? Even they turned out to just be kind of jerks
Yeah,
in the
even
end.
they were jerks. Yeah, totally.
Chakotay's Sky Spirit people, they weren't too bad, I guess.
No, but they're not allies.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a few resources from them, but that was it.
Yeah.
Well, if I look at women in the future, probably one of the reasons why I don't like the Kazon is this misogynistic crap that they keep spewing. It's getting old, and there's just absolutely no women anywhere in any of these other alien races, which doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah.
Why is it only Janeway? And that's certainly, it's getting old.
Even the Klingons had women chancellors.
They did, and captains on ships.
Yep.
So that's a little bit obnoxious. And this thing that we were talking about earlier about how, is Seska really the one who's running the ship? And maybe she is, but even that, to me as a woman, is a little frustrating.
Yeah.
That the only way she could do anything is if she was being sort of underhanded and doing it secretly.
Yeah.
And it's like, we get sort of sick of that too. It's like, can we do that? Yes. Do we do that? Yes. Have I done that? Yes. But because sometimes you have to because somebody else is holding you back.
Yeah.
But this is supposed to be more progressive, so I'd like to see it be a little bit more inclusive.
Yeah.
That is a little bit frustrating. And on the leadership side, we talked a lot about leadership already. I think there are examples in this episode of Janeway being a good leader.
Yeah.
I think there are examples in this episode of Janeway not being a good leader. Fewer examples of her not being a good leader.
I think it's a great example of her being a Starfleet Federation leader.
I would agree with that. Her being an actual Starfleet captain, I think, on display 100% in this episode. And yes, does she make mistakes? She absolutely does. But at the end, she was still like, these are our principles, we're going to adhere to them. And that's what you want your Starfleet captain to do, or your Star Trek captain to do. So I think that was all good.
Do you think part of the story there was showing that this is what happens when you stray from the Starfleet Federation leadership principles?
Yeah, I think so. When you don't listen to Gene Roddenberry, this is what happens. And I don't really think that.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah. But there is a lot, again, of bad things to say about Chakotay. He is not helping with the Maquis.
Yeah.
And the whole point of making him the first officer was so that he would. And he's just continues to do nothing. So, boo.
So you're saying his annual review will be very negative?
I think we've said that before. His performance review is below expectations. I just wish he were doing more of the job because he's coasting.
Yeah.
And I don't like it. Because he's not supporting his captain.
Oh, agreed.
All right. Then let's talk rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Absolute thumbs up. Great episode. Thoroughly enjoyable. I liked the introduction of the Trabe. I liked the fact that they were not what they seemed. We got more of the history of the sector and sort of the attitude of the Kazon. Everything was good. I thought it was a good Star Trek episode. I think it was great that it upheld the principles of Starfleet and the Federation. And I liked how Janeway didn't have to compromise. So definitely a thumbs up. I enjoyed this episode a lot.
I will also give it a thumbs up. I think it's a very good episode. I will say my first time through, when we got to the part where we were going to go and have this peace summit.
Yeah.
And you knew everything was going to go wrong. I turned it off for a while. I was just like, I'm so tired of us getting kicked in the teeth. And I just don't want to watch it. And then I came back to it later and went, okay, it's not so bad. We actually, sort of cleaned it up at the end. So I'm at this point with the show where I'm feeling uncomfortable and I want some wins. I want some positives, or at least I want us to focus on something other than us constantly losing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we could have those just sort of enclosed episodes that are just about like a normal Star Trek story on a planet or whatever.
I think the next two are definitely those self-contained stories.
Okay, good. That's good. Although I know what the next one is.
Yes. Our listeners will too.
So speaking of that wraps up episode 14. Come back next time for episode 15, The Infamous Threshold.
Yes. I would advise everyone to go and watch this episode before the next podcast. You will not be disappointed.
Very well-known episode.
Yep.
And we have invited Atiba Royster to record with us. So that's our current plan. And he picked it. I guess I shouldn't say we invited him. We said he could pick his episode and he picked Threshold. So be very curious to see why, especially when you know which episodes he picked on the Deep Space Nine show. It's funny that he picked Threshold. That will be next week. Or actually, it will be in 2 weeks because we're still doing Prodigy in the alternate weeks. All right. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at ReBingeIT@gmail.com. We are on the socials, the thing that used to be called Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and YouTube, all at ReBingeIt. And you are welcome to join the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.